It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're wrapping September 2005 up with the 30th of September, and we've got 7 movies to look at, and they range from some underrated films, some cult classics, some films that probably the studio thought was going to be much bigger than they expected, and it just wasn't. We have the feature film debut for the Firefly crew, which would be their only feature film effort. Paul Walker and Jessica Alba starring in a movie that everyone thought was going to be the It movie of the year. Shia LaBeouf in a kind of a little underrated sports drama set around the world of golf. Philip Seymour Hoffman getting his Oscar-winning role in this biopic we have with him in it. Julianne Moore has an Oscar bait movie. Jim Henson's Company has a movie that we have to look at. And there's a movie with Josh Hutcherson in it. So we have a lot of films to get to here. I'm already wasting your time with the intro. Let's just jump on into it. Let's start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that was, of course, Serenity. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting movie in general here. This is, of course, the feature film debut for the crew from the Fox series Firefly, which only lasted half a season because it's Fox, and despite the fact that it had a strong critical reception, audiences seemed to like it, but they pushed it on to Friday nights when nobody was home to watch it, and this was before the days when you could just rewatch it again on digital, but you had to watch it on air first, and got canceled after only 13 episodes. But went on to have this big cult following that eventually led into this movie. So a lot of people really thought this was going to be the next Star Trek. We'll get more into that in just a second here, but this is a film that's continuing the events from the series, taking place after the events of the last episode, and it's set in 2517, where you have the story of the crew of the Serenity, a Firefly-class spaceship. The captain and first mate are veterans of the Unification War. They having fought on the losing independent side against the Alliance. Their lives of smuggling and cargo running are interrupted by a psychic passenger who harbors a dark secret. And then, of course, everybody from the show is back in this. Nathan Fillion, Alan Tudyk, Alan Baldwin, Summer Glau, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Marina Baccarin, Gina Torres. You also have David Krumholtz in here. Ron Glass is also back in here as well. So yeah, this was kind of supposed to be the 21st century's equivalent to what happened with Star Trek, because of course, as you all know, Star Trek only ran for a few seasons back in the 1960s, but because the show had a strong life in syndication, and it began to develop this following that led to several conventions, Paramount was kind of essentially forced into making a motion picture in the hopes of starting a feature film franchise, and so, thus we got Star Trek the Motion Picture in 1979, which was a hit financially, but when you look back at that movie, it was very much a slow burn movie. Like, it was notoriously known for being a film that took way too much time to get going, and it was often seen as a film that was not well received by most people. But because the film did so well, they had to make a sequel, and thus we got Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, which is one of the best sequels of all time. I don't think I need to explain why that is, but eventually led to the Star Trek franchise that we know today, still going stronger than ever through the power of most of these shows on Paramount Plus, which most of them have been pretty good. I'm not going to lie, I know a lot of people who don't like the Paramount Plus shows, but I've seen a lot of really good stuff from the Star Trek Paramount Plus shows in general. The movie series has been kind of shut down since Star Trek Beyond, which wasn't a bad movie in general, but I'm really curious about when they're gonna bring the film series back in full. But yeah, it's interesting because I bring this up because Serenity and Star Trek the Motion Picture do have a lot of similar aspects to them. Star Trek the Motion Picture was mostly criticized for being way too slow burn, didn't really get to the good stuff until very late on, and even when it did, it was kind of too little too late. Serenity kind of has that problem too, except I think it takes itself a little bit too seriously compared to the television series, and it kind of dings up the movie a little bit there, but not to the point where it's a bad movie. Far from it. It's still a really good, really entertaining movie, but it's definitely a film that takes itself way too seriously at times. You know, they have characters from the show that were beloved that get killed off, but yeah, it's a weird tonal shift of a movie. Like, at some point, like, it will definitely fit the mold of the TV series at some points, but then they'll just do random things that don't make a whole lot of sense, like, you know, killing off people that you know from the TV series for no particular reason, because we need to have a weighted arc to the storyline here. And I don't know, to me, it just kind of feels like it can't figure out what to take from the TV series and what to add to the movie to give it its own refreshing feel to it. And what they give us here is not a bad movie in general. It's just not it's far from, I mean, it's not even that bad of a movie at all. I mean, it's still a good movie, I feel like it could have been a great movie, though, if it had just picked a side of what they wanted to work with here. Like, either go the way of, like, the Guardians of the Galaxy, where you can be goofy and chaotic and fun, and then have those brief moments of heart to the storyline here with the characters involved here. But this movie, I feel like, has too much of a tonal shift between what kind of a story it wants to tell and what kind of a story that they were hoping to do, that they give us, that really... Like, it really does, I don't know, it's weird, because I don't hate the movie. I do like the movie in general. I think it is a ton of fun, but there are definitely those times when it does take itself a little bit way too seriously for its own good. Like, it's a movie that I can't say it's a bad movie. It's not a bad movie by any means necessary, but it definitely is a film that has a big problem with its tonal shift in general. But the stuff that does work with the stuff that you love from Firefly is definitely in here in general. The cast is great in here. When it can be goofy and fun, it definitely works in the film's favor. But then when it gets way too serious for its own good, it kind of dings itself a little bit to where I can't say it's a great movie, but I can still say it's a really good movie. And even if you never saw Firefly in general, because I didn't see Firefly when I first went to this movie. I went to this very much blind by just watching the film itself, and I thought it was a good time overall. But then when I watched the series in general and then watched this, it definitely does ding it down a little bit compared to what they were trying to do, compared to what I think their idea was for the film in general. I mean, me personally, it's still a really good movie. Is it a great movie? I can't really say that, because it definitely has a problem with its tonal shift at times, but overall, it's still an enjoyable film, and one I would highly recommend. Even if you've never seen the original Firefly series, it's definitely something worth the watch. It's definitely something that is indeed worth it in the long run, because it does show you what Joss Whedon is capable of as a director, and what he would show later on down the road with the Avengers movies he would be involved in. Or at least in my opinion, the Justice League movie he did, but that's just my personal opinion on it. Yeah, overall, good movie, but definitely could have been a great movie if they had just picked the tone of where they wanted to go with it. But that is Serenity. So that was supposed to be one of the big hits of the weekend. Another movie that was supposed to be one of the big hits of the weekend, and kind of self-congratulating itself before it even came out. Paul Walker and Jessica Alba starring in Into the Blue. Yeah, you want to know why this movie was supposed to be a success? Right there. Put Jessica Alba in a blue bikini, put her in the ocean. I swear it looks like a Sports Illustrated swimsuit magazine cover. I mean, I'm actually kind of surprised it isn't, but this is literally why they thought the movie was going to be successful. Not because of anything that was going on in the movie, but this image right here became such an iconic image on its own merits that they were literally writing the movie's success on this image alone. Was it a success? Toy boat? Was it a success? Nope. Didn't even make back its $50 million budget. And it's kind of easy to see why if you actually watch the movie in general. You have a story which focuses on a group of divers who go treasure hunting and find a sunken plane filled with illicit shipments. You got Paul Walker and Jessica Alba, of course, with Scott Conn, Ashley Scott, Josh Brolin, and James Frain starring in the film. It was directed by the same guy that did Blue Crush, which was a really good movie that came out a couple years prior, but yeah, this movie sucks. This is a really, really bad movie that completely devoids the talents of these two actors in general. I've seen Jessica Alba be in good movies and TV shows, I liked her in Dark Angel. I thought that was a criminally underrated show. Again, a Fox show that was quickly canceled because shipped out to Fridays, but Paul Walker has been in a lot of good stuff too, but we'll eventually get to some of his better movies, starting with next year's Running Scared. But in this, they're just there to be, they're just there to be models. They're there to be models to titillate the audience. Like, you have Jessica Alba titillating the guys, Paul Walker titillating the girls, or maybe it's the other way around, equal opportunities for everything around here. But the film is just so stupid in its storyline here. There's nothing there. It's literally a film that literally exists so you can just watch these hot 20-somethings in swimsuits and skimpy clothing because, they've got the hot bodies to work with, and we don't have anything else in terms of a story, so here you go. You need more than that. You need to give us something more than that. Like, Blue Crush had the girls in swimsuits and all that, but there was at least a story there to work with, and a story that did work to the film's advantage. And this is pretty. This is just TNA in the movie. I mean, this is pretty much a film that literally exists just for those images of Paul Walker and Jessica Alba to titillate the audiences, because the story is so bland and forgettable. It's mindless. It has nothing of value to it whatsoever. It's a movie everyone thought was literally going to be the next big hit. I wish I could find the clip from Robot Chicken when the movie just came out afterwards, because Robot Chicken did this great bit where, they're showing clips from Into the Blue, and then Seth Green comes out and goes, "Hi, I'm Seth Green. I hope you enjoyed our parody of Into the Blue. We know that it's going to be a massive hit, and it's already been nominated for several Academy Awards." And it's a great sketch from Robot Chicken, but unfortunately, a lot of Robot Chicken sketches I wish I could show you, sadly, are not available on YouTube. You have to actually have the Max app to find most of these, but that's enough hard work to do already. So yeah, but you can definitely find it. I believe it's in season 2, where that particular segment is, because season 1 was in 2005, 2 was in 2006. You get the idea. But other than that, though, yeah, avoid this movie like the plague. It's definitely a lazy film that is just nothing but TNA for the audiences, and not even good TNA in general. It's just, you expect so much better, especially with the director involved, who made a good movie last time, but this, not so much. So, with that said, let us go ahead and move on to our next movie, another criminally underrated movie here, and that is Shia LaBeouf in the Disney sports film, excuse me, I'm messing up today, in the Disney sports film, the golf film, The Greatest Game Ever Played. A movie that completely was ruined by its marketing campaign, because you have that great trailer right there. It's a really good trailer that gives you an idea of what the movie is like, but then you gotta dumb it down for the kids by doing a commercial like that for the television audiences. And yeah, I could see why this movie didn't do so well, because yeah, that would have made me not want to see the movie had I not seen the trailer for it. But this is the story about a amateur golf champion, Francis Ouimet, and the surprising win of the 1913 U.S. Open, with Shia LaBeouf playing the role of Ouimet. The trailer doesn't tell you who's behind this movie, because this is actually Bill Paxton's second film as a director behind the movie Frailty, which was another great movie of his, but also Mark Frost, who is the same guy that worked on such shows as Hill Street Blues and Twin Peaks. This is actually based off of his book in general. This is a really good movie that sadly nobody really gets to talk about in general. We've seen so many Disney sports movies, but when you really look back at all these movies, in that trailer they talk about, from the studio that brought you Remember the Titans, The Rookie, and Miracle, but they also have done a lot of other good sports movies too. Like, Disney makes a lot of good sports underdog stories, like Glory Road is a great one, Invincible, we're going to get to that one a little bit later on. We had a couple of good ones in the last decade with McFarlane USA, Queen of Katwe, what's another one? Secretariat's a good one. So yeah, their sports movies in general are actually really, really good. Even goofy comedies like The Game Plan, which is a movie that it's another one of those movies like Kindergarten Cop, like let's take the tough guy and put him in a kid movie. It surprisingly works, because yeah, Dwayne Johnson's a charismatic personality, and he can make bad movies work in general, and for the most part. But we'll get to that one in a couple of years' time. But even if you're not a big golf fan in general, this is still a really damn good movie, and it shows what Shia LaBeouf can do as an actor that we'll later see in movies like Disturbia, and even in early films like Transformers, the first one, or Eagle Eye, or Surf's Up. Like, a lot of these great movies that show what Shia LaBeouf can do as an actor as a whole, and this is definitely a very good showcase for what he can do overall. And he's got a strong cast to work around him, with Stephen Delane, Elias Koteas among the cast here. It's a very underrated film that sadly does not get the proper attention it deserves. It really came and went mostly because of how bad they botched the marketing campaign for television. Because man, that commercial was rough to go through, and I couldn't believe that. Like, I get it. This is a movie that is not for the typical Disney audience in general, but still, you have to be better than you have to come up with a better trailer than that if you're going to sell this to people and to audiences in general. But for some reason, I thought this movie was rated G, which wouldn't be surprising in general, because this was still back around the time when you can do a G-rated movie like this, and people could go see it without having to fear about the MPA having to fear that this movie won't sell because it's a G-rated movie. No, it's not. This was back when they weren't afraid of the G rating in general. Case in point of the movie that we'll talk about on next week's show. But on the next show for next week, I should say, that'll be tomorrow. But getting back on topic at hand here with The Greatest Game Ever Played, It's a really good movie, and one that I definitely think deserves a lot more attention. Just goes to show you what Bill Paxton, the late Bill Paxton, can do as a director as a whole. He does a very good job of handling this, and it's a great showcase for Shia LaBeouf as an actor as a whole. Not much more I could say about it, man. It's a really good movie that definitely deserves a lot more attention. You can find it on Disney Plus. It's definitely worth a watch. The greatest game ever played. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie. Let's get to some indie movies. And we are at the end of September, which means it's Oscar season, and we've got a lot of awards-bait movies here, starting with probably the biggest one of the bunch, and that is Philip Seymour Hoffman, who won an Oscar for playing the role of Truman Capote in Capote. See, no matter how hard you tried, that Capote is going to be way too hard to top. Philip Seymour Hoffman is fantastic in this movie. This is, of course, a biographical film that follows the events during the writing of Capote's 1965 book, In Cold Blood, and it's based off of Gerald Clark's 1988 biography of the same name. Directed by Bennett Miller, who would later give us some good movies like Foxcatcher, which came out about 9 years after this. Dan Futterman has written some good movies too, and yeah, there was a couple of movies around this time that was trying to capture the Truman Capote as a whole. There was another one that came out the next year, Infamous, which featured Toby Jones from Harry Potter as Truman Capote, which was a good movie. And we just had recently, as of this year, Feud, Capote versus the Swans, a really good show with a lot of great top leading actresses in that show. But the one caveat of that show in general, which I still think is one of the weakest parts of it, is Truman Capote himself, played by Tom Hollander, which, I mean, he did get better as the show went on, but it's just not as good as what Philip Seymour Hoffman did in this movie. He made him a character in this movie, and Philip Seymour Hoffman is the reason you should see this movie, because he really does give it his all in this film. You could tell why he won the Best Actor for playing this role in a year where he could have easily been beaten out by Joaquin Phoenix for Walk the Line, which is a great performance as Johnny Cash in that movie for Phoenix. We'll get into that one in a couple weeks' time, but this is a really good movie, not only because of him, but Catherine Keener is also very good. You have a cast that includes Clifton Collins, Bruce Greenwood, Amy Ryan, Chris Cooper, Mark Pellegrino. A lot of good talent involved in this movie, a really good script in general. It's a really good movie, and one I definitely recommend checking out. It's a film that is definitely worth it. I'd say I highly recommend it. Definitely check it out. If you want to see a really good performance, Philip Seymour Hoffman as Truman Capote makes this movie worth it in the end. See Capote. So that's a good Oscar bait movie. How about a bad Oscar bait movie? Let's take a look at Julianne Moore in the prize winner of Defiance, Ohio. You can tell when this is a bad movie when the title literally has to come off as this whimsical fantasy film. But yeah, this is the prize winner of Defiance, Ohio, and in the film you have Kelly and Evelyn Ryan, played by Julianne Moore and Woody Harrelson. They live in Defiance, Ohio with their 10 children, and at first glance, their life seems idyllic. They call each other mother and father, and seem to dote on the kids. But Kelly was a garage band crooner whose voice was ruined in an auto accident. He's resigned to a dead-end factory job that barely pays the bills, and is given to fits of alcohol-induced rage. Evelyn, a stay-at-home wife and mother, deals with this abuse by appealing to a priest who is no help at all. She deals with the poverty by entering the jingle contest that were the rage in the 50s and early 60s, even sending in multiple entries in the names of their children. She is very clever at it, winning more than her share of prizes, but her successes aren't enough to keep the wolf from the door. Further, they trigger Kelly's insecurities, and he retreats deeper into the bottle, using food and mortgage money to support the habit. I don't even need to finish the plot for this movie. This is the literal definition of a textbook, cliched, riddled Oscar bait movie, and I'm sorry, I love all these actors that are involved in here, Julianne Moore, Woody Harrelson, Laura Dern, but you need to give them better movies than this, because, my God, this is about as generic and as bland of an Oscar bait movie as you could possibly get. This is an abysmal film that is just so bland, so boring, so uninventive, so indescribably mediocre on so many levels. They really thought this was going to be an Oscar contender this year, and, yeah, this was definitely not one of those good movies. And another bad movie for Julianne Moore. I feel like I badmouthed her in the last couple of months because she had some really bad movies in 2004, and then she does movies like this. I don't hate Julianne Moore. I think Julianne Moore's a great actress, but my God, she picked some really bad movies around this time, and this is definitely a really lackluster film that is just so bland and so boring. there's no value to it whatsoever. Just these great actors being wasted on really lackluster scripts. It's no wonder why this movie didn't do so well, because yeah, it's a mess of a movie. Just, it's a bland film. It's a lackluster film. Not much more to say about it, but yeah, it's your typical cliched Oscar bait film. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Mirror Mask. So in Mirror Mask, I keep wanting to say Mirror Mask. It's like those titles are too close to each other. Mirror Mask, in a fantasy world of opposing kingdoms, a 15-year-old girl named Helena, who works at the family circus with her father and mother, who wishes, quite ironically, that she could run away from the circus and join real life. But such is not to be the case. She finds herself on a strange journey into the Darklands, a fantastic landscape filled with giants, monkey birds, and dangerous sphinx. She must find the fabled Mirror Mask in order to save the kingdom and get back home. So, definitely very reminiscent of something like Labyrinth in general. And this is actually based off of a Neil Gaiman book of the same name. And speaking of Labyrinth, Jim Henson's company was behind this film in general. And I think because it was way too similar to something like Labyrinth, it's a film that kind of came and went. And quite frankly, I can honestly see why. Because yeah, it's very much like a modern, like Jim Henson's company was trying to recreate the magic that they had with Labyrinth 20 years ago, but 20 years from this point. But yeah, it's not a good movie. It's visually pleasing to look at. It's one of those. It's definitely the perfect example of a style over substance movie. Excuse me. But yeah, it's a style over substance movie where the visual aspect, I think, is where they spent most of the money at. The script, not so much. The script overall is definitely lackluster. Like, it's pretty much stuff you've seen done before in movies like Labyrinth or even The Dark Crystal, which are far better movies in general. But this, I give it credit for the ambition on the visual front, but they really should have spent more time on the story to give it its own unique edge to it. But it's just not worth it in the end. It's a shame, because I could see where the effort was being put into it, but unfortunately it was mostly in the visual look of the film. And as we always say, visuals don't make the effing movie. They just don't, and this is a prime example of that. So, yeah, unfortunately, I say a hard pass on Miramax. Good-looking film, not in the script department, though. So, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie we have here, and that is Little Manhattan. A very simple story in general. You have Josh Hutcherson from not Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Kicking and Screaming. He was also in the Polar Express and soon will be in stuff like Bridge to Terabithia. But in the story, you have him as a 10-year-old boy who experiences his first love in Manhattan. Quite literally, that's all the movie is in general. This is directed by Jennifer Flacken and Mark Levine, who had done movies we've already looked at before. Madeline, they wrote the script for that. They also did Wimbledon, which was a film we also took a look at, and they'll later direct Nim's Island after this. This is probably overall their best film as a whole. Like, I do love the relationship between these two kids. It's a nice little coming-of-age storyline here, where you just have a kid who falls in love for the first time with this girl, and he's doing everything he can to, try to figure out how to handle his first love in general. You also have a good cast that includes Cynthia Nixon from Sex and the City and Bradley Whitford as his parents in general, and it's a nice, simple storyline. It's a very nice, simple storyline taking place in the biggest city on Earth, and it works. It works because you believe the kid's relationship. You believe that this kid has found his first love and is willing to do whatever it takes to tell her that how he feels about her. And it's just like, it's a well done storyline. It's a really good coming of age storyline. It's very simple to understand, and it just works because of that, the simplicity of it. There's no big conflicts in here. This is just a slice of real life, and it works very well to the film's advantage. It's a film that doesn't really get the proper attention I think it deserves. It's definitely a very underrated film, one that you should definitely check out, especially if you like Josh Hutcherson's work in other movies. The Hunger Games movies is what I'm thinking of, that he was also in. But if you want to see some of Josh Hutcherson's best stuff, Little Manhattan is definitely one you might want to check out. Definitely another very underrated little gem that came out this weekend. So, a couple little underrated gems this weekend, ones to definitely check out indeed. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and we have another stacked week of movies coming up to start October off. We have Wallace and Gromit making their big screen debut in The Curse of the Were-Rabbit from DreamWorks Animation. We have Cameron Diaz and Toni Collette starring alongside Shirley MacLaine in Her Shoes, directed by Curtis Hanson. Matthew McConaughey, Al Pacino, and Rene Russo in Two for the Money, so 3 really good movies right off the bat. We also have The Gospel, which was one of the big surprise hits of the year. Ryan Reynolds in the Anna Faris and Justin Long, among many others, in the cult hit, in the cult comedy classic Waiting. We also have George Clooney's directorial debut, Good Night and Good Luck. We also have Where the Truth Lies with Alison Lohman and Colin Firth. We also have Noah Baumbach's The Squid and the Whale, too. So that's 8 movies. Yeah, 8 movies to look at. So a lot of good films coming your way next up. But a lot of good underrated films. One you should definitely check out indeed. But we'll delve more into all of those coming up on the next episode, which will be posted tomorrow. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the place on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with all that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time. And until then, as always, take care.